We live in a golden age of surveillance. Collecting data, that's the economic engine of tech. And really imagine every message you've ever sent to anyone is now in a database. Ultimately, that those who have power over you aren't able to weaponize that information. The only way to protect data is not to collect it. End-to-end encryption, the technology that actually provides privacy, for Signal, it's everything for us. We collect, again, as close to no data as possible.
In Japan, crime groups use Signal for yami baito. Some people blame it on Signal.
Criminals also drive cars on the public roads. No one blames crime on public roads. And an easy way to pass the buck.
クロスリーグ101始まります。今日は韓国ソウルからお届けします。私は今世界的なプライバシー研究のカンファレンスに来ています。AI とビッグテックによる監視社会を批判するある世界的リーダーにどうしても会いたくて韓国ソウルまで来てしまいました。メッセージングアプリシグナルを運営する非営利団体の社長メレディス・ウィテカーさんです。かつて Google に研究者として所属し Google 批判のデモも率いた AI 業界のキーパーソンです。日本では珍しいロングインタビューです。ぜひ最後までたっぷりご覧ください。So Meredith, thank you. Thank you very much for joining us. I've been hoping you to be on the show for almost half a year.
Well, I am so happy to be here, so I'm glad we were able to make it happen.
Yeah, we finally meet in Seoul, which I didn't expect.
Yeah.
But here we are at one of the biggest privacy conferences, and you just gave a keynote this morning. So you are the president of Signal Foundation, which runs private messaging app Signal. So to kickstart our conversation, what is Signal and what do you do as the president?
Well, Signal is the world's largest actually private messaging app. We have hundreds of millions of downloads across the world, and we exist as core infrastructure for private communication. We're used by militaries, governments, human rights workers, journalists, really anyone who has high stakes information to communicate, whether that be a weird note to your crush or military commands across jurisdictions. We are critical infrastructure for the fundamental right to privacy.
So, what exactly is Signal? It's a messaging app, but one operated differently from most. It's run by a non-profit organization, the Signal Foundation. This means its operating costs are covered primarily by donations, allowing for a model that doesn't rely on advertising or using your personal information. But the app's key feature is its security. All communications are protected by what's known as end-to-end encryption. This means every message is scrambled and secured from the moment it leaves the sender's device until the moment it reaches the recipient. In between, no one can read its content. Not the Signal Foundation, not government agencies, not even hackers. Think of it like this. You're sending a message inside a locked box, and only two people in the entire world hold the key, the sender and the recipient. And why is it a nonprofit?
That's a great question. So we're not a nonprofit because we think there's something virtuous or more noble about being a nonprofit. We're a nonprofit because we exist in a very particular industry where the economic model, the way that money is made in the tech industry, is through collecting data and making money off it, whether that's collecting data and using that to create advertising models that fuel personalized advertising, surveillance advertising, or collecting data and training your AI model with that data. Ultimately, that's the economic engine of tech. And we do something different. We do something truly innovative, which is provide robust privacy, an open source privacy, which means you can verify that we are actually doing what we say we do. And so we build to get as close to collecting zero data as possible. which is obviously not the way that money is made in tech. And so we have structured ourselves as a nonprofit. So we are never pushed by our board, pushed by our investors, pushed by other shareholders to undermine that fundamental promise in the name of revenue and profit.
Okay, that's right. So you said government, military, and even CIA use Signal.
Even the CIA.
Yeah. So, but what is the biggest reason for ordinary people, like our audience, to use Signal?
Well, ultimately, people use communications platforms because they want to talk to other people. We are social creatures. We want to be in community with each other. We want to be included in the party. We want to know the plans. We want to be able to say, hey, friend, I don't know, I feel a little weird about this. I need to have a conversation. There's something I don't really want my boss to know. I don't really want leaked in a data breach. I don't totally feel comfortable about. So people use Signal when they have things to say to other people, whether those people are in government or on a board of directors, or just a group of friends who says, like, look, I don't really want our party planning to be on Meta's servers so that Mark can decide someday that, to use that data to train AI or to use that data in ways that might be unsafe.
Right.
And we have, again, hundreds of millions of people across the world download and use Signal app to communicate from everything from the very mundane. My neighborhood group is on Signal, for example, to the very, very high stakes. We know, for example, that the Ukraine military makes a huge amount of use of Signal, as do militaries across the world. Again, everyone, everywhere has a right to privacy, and we see people across the spectrum using Signal and exercising that right.
Right. But some people say, like, if Google, Meta, like Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, or X, can recommend good content to me with data or do other good things to me, I don't care if I give up a little privacy or something like that. But so why should normal people still care about privacy?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a really good question, because in some sense, if we put privacy in very shallow, maybe dry terms, it's hard to imagine why we care. We have laundry to do. We have work to do. We have rent to pay. We have so many things in our real lives that we care about that, oh my God, who has time to care about data protection? That is very boring. I will admit, that is very boring. But I think we need to tell the story a little differently. And there's an exercise I'll do. If you, dear viewer, want to close your eyes for a moment and really imagine every message you've ever sent to anyone in your whole life is now in a database. And that means the angry message you sent to your friend, the breakup message you wish you didn't send, the message you sent to your colleague saying that, hey, I don't really like my boss. Everything is in a database. And you are brought into a room and you are told, hey, we're about to send the link to this database to everyone you've ever known in your life. Your parents, your grandparents, your children, your crush, your high school classmates, your colleagues, your boss, the government, anyone. And they can click on that link and they can search the database for their name. They can find any message you've ever sent.
Right.
Let that sink in. Now, what would you be prepared to do? Who would you be prepared to sell out? What would you be prepared to say to prevent that link from being sent to all of those people in your lives? And if it were sent, how many of those relationships would survive? So I think when you think about that, when you put it in those terms, it's not about data protection. It's not boring. It is existentially important to being able to live a full and rich life, that you're able to say what you want, that you're able to have different communications with different people, and ultimately that those who have power over you aren't able to weaponize that information to harm you or to force you to take actions that you might not be comfortable with.
So you mean once the data is stored in somewhere like server, some company's server, there will be the risk. So this risk was born.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right
the
there.
only way to protect data is not to collect it ultimately. And we know that it's sitting on a server now, untouched, nothing has happened. What could be the harm? But let's say another political regime comes into power that decides that certain activity is not to its liking, that wearing a black blazer is something that they would like to criminalize. As absurd as that sounds, let's just say. And they go through that database and they find the people who wear black blazers, and suddenly those people are on a list. Once data is collected, it is there forever, and it can be weaponized in the future in ways we might not be imagining in the present.
So if I use Facebook Messenger, WhatsApp, or Line, that's popular in Japan, and Telegram, or even iMessage, well, they say they have end-to-end encryption into the system, which stops people from peeking the message from outside. So what makes Signal different from others?
Let's put it this way metaphorically. When it comes to WhatsApp, Telegram, or Line, end-to-end encryption is one ingredient among many that they use to bake the cake. For Signal, it's everything for us. We encrypt across the stack, so we collect, again, as close to no data as possible. WhatsApp licenses our technology in order to encrypt only one layer of the cake. And that's what you are saying. So the messages we send to each other. But there's a lot more data than that. A lot more data that's very important, including the fact that you and I are speaking to each other, our profile photos, our contact list. When did we start communicating with each other? When did we stop? What groups are we in? What is the timing and location of those calls or those messages? All very intimate information that tells them a lot about us that is not encrypted. Telegram has almost no encryption. End-to-end encryption, the technology that actually provides privacy, is an opt-in feature only for one-on-one text, not for groups. And if we didn't explicitly opt in, say turn this on, then it doesn't work for us. So Telegram is barely encrypted. They can say we use encryption, but again, that is a tiny ingredient in the overall cake they are baking. And then Line is similar. It's an opt-in feature. It is not fundamental to how they do business. So again, there's a huge amount more data collected. Signal, we don't know who's talking to whom. We don't know who's in your groups. We don't have your profile photo. We don't have any information about the messages you're sending. And end-to-end encryption is the default for everything that happens on Signal, whether a call, a video call, a group text, or a one-to-one message. So Signal is truly a cake made out of 100% end-to-end encryption, whereas our competition uses only a small percentage and cannot actually claim the privacy properties that Signal upholds the gold standard of.
But isn't it hard to tell people about that? Like, convince people?
To people who may not have studied the narrow disciplines that allow them to understand that at the technical level. But I'm not hopeless about it because I think more and more people care about privacy. And you can tell, from Apple to WhatsApp, the big companies are advertising themselves as privacy preserving because they know that's what people want. So I feel emboldened to continue to explain this, to continue to think about how do we put this in terms people understand, whether it's cakes or a database with your messages on it, so that people can really get their arms around a complex topic. People are smart. They will understand their self-interest. They recognize that privacy is important. And if we, recognize that they don't have to understand the complex math of encryption to realize that it's important for them and what they do care about, I think we can communicate this ultimately very clearly.
Are you yourself feeling that the change in how people feel about privacy?
Absolutely. I think, 5 or 10 years ago, people would kind of laugh. They'd say, privacy is dead. No one cares about privacy. I haven't heard that very frequently from people now. And even though privacy continues to be imperiled, you don't have people offering a blasé answer saying that, in fact, no one cares about it. I think that there is a cultural sensitivity to privacy that has pervaded almost every conversation I've had in the last few years. And as the world gets more uncertain, that's only becoming more true.
What was the tipping point to change that?
I don't know. I don't know that there was one tipping point, but I feel like, it's a bit like, the straw that broke the camel's back, that, it's one thing after another, data breach after data breach, irresponsible data practice after irresponsible data practice. We have political uncertainty, and that means that the reality that a tech company that was allied with one regime may ally with a very different regime the next year or the next 3 years and use your data very differently is sinking into a lot of people. I think the concentration of power in the tech ecosystem is also making people a bit wary about privacy. When it's only a handful of companies that have control over global infrastructures, people don't feel as comfortable with that trade-off as they may have when it felt less concentrated in the past.
Okay. So in a society where people care more about privacy, so how many users do you use Signal right now?
Well, we don't give exact numbers, but you can look at just the Play Store on Android and see that it's been downloaded, I think, over 200 million times, and that's just one app. And we are seeing, what I can say is we are seeing steady growth. We were the top application in the App Store in the Netherlands this year for a number of months running. We were the most downloaded application in Finland for around a month, and we're seeing, particularly in European markets, US markets, even some in Latin America, steady growth that has picked up over the last year.
What do you think drives the usage?
I mean, a number of factors. Of course, heightened privacy sensitivity helps drive usage. We see usage go up when there is, a competitor messes up, when WhatsApp adopts ads or starts shoving AI into everything in ways that people don't want. We see usage go up when there is political instability, when people begin to get nervous about those in power potentially accessing and weaponizing data. And we see usage go up when institutions, countries, governments adopt Signal. So the European Commission in 2020 recommended Signal to all European commissioners. Of course, that was reflected in user counts. So it's across the board. There are different exogenous factors that lend themselves to increased growth, and right now we have a lot of those working together at once.
Okay. But ordinary people, like we talk about,
like you and me.
Yeah, you and me, and people want to use the app that friends and family use. Yeah. So that's the network effect, like early Facebook did.
Exactly.
So what do you think is needed to make that happen for Signal?
I mean, that is exactly right. You cannot use an app that your friends don't use. Doesn't matter what, if you are the most pure, ideologically committed Berlin hacker who loves privacy, you still cannot use Signal if your dad, your cousin, your friend from college doesn't use Signal. So, this isn't about apps, really, right? This is about human connections and communication and the fact that we want to talk to each other and we will go to where people are. So the network effect is very sticky, but it's those exogenous factors that we see driving people en masse in groups, your group of friends, your colleagues, your country onto Signal. For example, after the Russian invasion of Ukraine, we saw Ukraine rise from one of the lowest usage countries as measured by country code to one of our top countries in a matter of a week or so. So you see these pressures when it moves away from the theoretical, from the boring, from data flows and data protection to the existential. My safety, my family's safety. What could a hostile government do if they had information about me communicating with my loved one on the front lines? When things get real like that, people switch en masse. And they get real in the context of our competition doing silly things like adding too much AI, to governments changing, to a wartime invasion, to again a country or an institution saying we are now using Signal, move over to Signal. And when that happens, everyone moves so everyone can talk to each other, so we see adoption.
Right. But there is another side to this story. Signal's powerful privacy-protecting encryption has also been used by criminal groups. In Japan, a serious social issue has emerged, known as yamibaito, or dark part-time jobs. In many of these cases, the criminal masterminds use Signal to give orders to those carrying out the crimes. The situation has grown so serious, the police have issued public warnings, specifically naming apps like Signal and Telegram. This leads to a hard question for Whittaker. What is her response to the criticism that the existence of the app is helping to promote crime? But on the other side of private messaging, crime groups also use Signal to do the crimes. But in Japan, crime groups use Signal for yamibaito, which is the dark part-time job that young people are recruited online to do crimes. And some people blame it on Signal or the other private messaging app. So what do you say to those people who say private messaging app is dangerous?
I say that is a very, very myopic view that ignores the real evidence around criminality. Criminals also drive cars on the public roads like everyone else. Criminals buy food from the grocery store. Criminals do many things that normal people do. No one blames crime on public roads.
Right.
And so I think it's an easy way to ignore the complex social dynamics of crime, and an easy way to pass the buck, to say the reason we didn't prevent crime is because there are these private messengers, and if only we could undermine the encryption that enables privacy, we would have done our jobs well. Well, there's no evidence that shows that. And particularly Signal. Signal is one thing, and it does one thing very well. It is a private communications app. It doesn't have a directory. I can't go on Signal and find other people who I don't already know. I can't search for, I want to meet people named Robert. I have to meet somebody, put them in my Signal context. So it's not allowing that sort of, interest group spread. It is not a social media platform. You can't go viral on Signal. It doesn't have mass channels like the social media platform Telegram or even WhatsApp. So it's not something where you can spread disinformation. It's just a private communications app. You have to meet someone outside of the app. You have to communicate with them there. But ultimately, it's not the only place that data lives. And I think it's curious that so often those in power point their fingers at private messaging as the problem, saying we can't access the data, when we live in a time when there has never been more data available to law enforcement and governments. We live in a golden age of surveillance. And when I talk to law enforcement officials behind the scenes, almost always their complaint is that there is too much data and not enough resources to sort through it. They don't have the funding. They don't have the technology. They don't have the ability to find the needle in the haystack, growing haystack of data that they are confronted with. So I would say that there is no merit to that argument. But again, I understand that it's a convenient way to pass the buck, and it sounds plausible to a public that probably hasn't had the time and doesn't have the expertise to think through the nuance of these arguments.
So it's almost like infrastructure, like roads, grocery
Exactly.
stores, public transportation. So
Exactly. Yeah. This is critical infrastructure to maintain the human norm of private communication. For hundreds of thousands of years, we assumed our conversation was private and ephemeral, that after we were done having it, it would disappear. That's how human communication worked.
Right.
Only in the last 30 years, give or take, with the ascent of the internet industry, with the assumption that all data would be captured by the companies that provided goods and services, have we ceded that right to privacy. And now it's assumed normal that all data would be accessible through a subpoena or through a capture, and that would be available to governments, whether they be authoritarian or democratic, and that they should be able to act on that data in the name of whatever. That is what's new. And that's what we should be concerned about.
Yeah. And you can't serve good people only, right?
No. Imagine the person you hate the most in the world, the villain in your extended universe, the demons that you're hunting for. They have to be able to use Signal for the person you love the most, the person who most needs that privacy protection, to also be able to use it. Because it's a network. And encryption requires a network. You can't just give a telephone an access to a cell phone plan to the good people.
Right.
Because ultimately, you're not going to be able to do that kind of vetting, and it is a network. If your friends don't use Signal, you can't use Signal.
And we're in Korea right now, not in Silicon Valley, not in the US. So why do you think it's important countries like Japan and Korea also participated in this kind of privacy debate?
Well, because privacy is a human right, not a US right. And because these infrastructures, these networks, these internet services are global. They're not regional. They don't stick to the US. And because every human being in the world deserves their fundamental rights and the ability to have a beautiful and joyful life where those in power can't weaponize information to harm and oppress them. In Japan, in Korea, in the US, everywhere.
Right.
So that's my answer.
Great to hear. In the year 2022, the arrival of ChatGPT dramatically changed the world. It ignited an AI arms race, which Meredith Whittaker warns against. In September, she contributed an article to the magazine, The Economist, pointing out the danger of this technology. Its title, AI Agents Are Coming for Your Privacy. AI agents, a new technology that can perform various tasks with just simple instructions. They are now attracting significant attention. However, Whittaker's warning is this: for these agents to function, they require access to users' digital life, access to almost all of it. And this process, she points out, transforms our sensitive personal information into a vast, insecure, daily slurry created for AI models. So I also want to ask you about AI. I want to touch upon agents in a little bit, but do you think ChatGPT and lots of other AI models put our privacy at risk in the first place?
Well, look, ChatGPT is an interface. It's an implementation that involves software, hardware, and a handful of different models sort of shuffled around in the back end. These models, these AI models themselves, these large language models, which is the current paradigm, require huge amounts of data. You're talking about the entire English language and non-English language web, scientific papers, books, the whole thing. And then they produce more data. So when you type in a question to ChatGPT, it produces more data.
Right.
And they require us to put our data, our prompts, in there to begin with. So at a fundamental level, yes, these are data-hungry systems. These are data-hungry technologies that are in tension with privacy. And that are being implemented in ways that absolutely do put our privacy at risk, in part because there is such a push from these companies to find market solutions, to find ways of creating products and services that people will use and people will pay for. Because not only are these data hungry technologies, they're very, 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 very expensive. It can cost $1 billion for one training run of one model. That's one training run, and usually you have more than one. It then costs millions and millions of dollars to tune that model into a shape that is appropriate for a business audience, to not say horribly offensive things or dangerous things like harm yourself. And then it costs a huge amount of money just to run these models. Inference, which is the process of an AI model processing a prompt and then coming up with a response, is much, much more expensive than just a software call to a traditional server. All of these things together mean that even though there are significant revenues coming in to the AI companies, they have yet to make profit. They have not broke even. And so you can see there's an economic pressure that has been leading, in my interpretation, to a kind of dismissal of tried and true privacy and security lessons, and to an integration of things like AI agents in ways that are significantly imperiling the future of privacy and security.
And you wrote an article about AI agents in The Economist recently.
I did.
It's called AI Agents Are Coming for Your Privacy. So what risks do AI agents bring to disrupt our privacy? Can you give us simple examples?
Yeah. Well, AI agent is the new thing. We all know this. We hear a lot about agents. Probably can't talk about AI without having the word agent come up. And what AI agents are, in general terms, are systems that are installed on our devices or coupled with an application or service that promise to do complex, multi-step tasks without asking our permission. So one example that we could say is, they will book a lunch for us. They will find a time that works on our calendar. They will make a reservation at the restaurant, and then they will message us saying, your lunch is booked. It's happening at this time at this place, and maybe they'll schedule a taxi. That sounds nice. We don't have to do it. No problems for us. But there's a cost. And the cost to this is that in order to do that booking, the agent needs access to our calendar to check, and every event on our calendar, knowing our lives. It needs access to our credit card information to make the restaurant reservation. It needs access to our browser to search for the restaurant. And then it needs access to our messaging app, maybe our Signal messaging app, in order to communicate with us that this lunch is booked and it's happening now. All of that means that it has significant permissions, root level permissions on our device, that is architected in a way that is giving it access to incredibly sensitive information in a kind of pool of information that can very easily be exfiltrated by hackers or hostile actors, and very importantly, that undermines the encryption promises that Signal and others make at the application layer. So if an agent can access your Signal messages, that becomes the vulnerability, the vector through which hackers and others can also access those messages, thus undermining the encryption that protects them. And this is very, very dangerous. It's basically commandeered our devices and our operating systems in service of agents and made them vehicles for surveillance and data access without asking our permission.
Why can agents do this without permission?
Because the operating system vendors are implementing them that way.
Apple, Google, Microsoft.
So iOS, Android, Windows. And these are also the companies at the forefront of AI because of their historical access to data, their access to very expensive infrastructures, and their control over the device, the platform, the operating system level.
So, do you think AI agents can access to Signal's data? Does Signal allow agents to access it?
We do not. This is a great question. And as of yet, we haven't seen agents rolled out that actually break Signal's encryption. However, the path we're on is one that will lead to that unless significant changes are made by the operating system vendors and by those who are deploying this AI. And that means we need to have clear developer level opt-outs so Signal can flip a switch and say, no, you can't access Signal data. This is private data. It's too important to provide to your agent. We need transparency, so it needs to be much, much clearer in the documentation provided by these companies what data is being used and how. This should be backed by open source code so we can validate those promises. And we need much clearer commitments from AI leaders and those in the industry that they are not going to undermine privacy and security, that they're going to work on developing operating systems that have much more rigorous separation of permissions and enable these systems in much safer ways. All of these are common sense throughout the tech industry. However, I believe that the economic pressures to break even around AI have led to some very, very dangerous corner cutting. And right now is the time to pull back and put these measures in place.
When we look back on what happened historically, the convenience always took over the concerns, I think. That's how big tech has been growing. So do you think you can stop that? Do you think you can stop people from using the agents?
I don't think this is a matter of convenience. I don't think it's a matter of choice. No one's choosing this. We wake up and we have a software update. We have an update to our operating system and suddenly it's doing something different.
Right.
But this isn't reflective of consumer choice. This is reflective of the type of concentrated power that three companies, Apple, Google, and Microsoft, who produce these operating systems and are at the forefront of AI, the power that these companies have to make these decisions on our behalf without asking us. So I don't think we can say people always choose convenience. We haven't chosen any of this. This is simply appearing on our device in the morning when we wake up.
We should be scared if it's too convenient, or
We should be concerned that the choice has been taken out of our hands. And we should work to regain the ability to honestly make that choice. Because there's another element to this that we haven't discussed, which is that these agents, the ones that do exist, don't always work that well. That, you have a model that needs to take 30 different steps in order to say, book us lunch and call the taxi, right? There's, find the restaurant, find a good time. There's many different steps there. Even if that model is 95% accurate, which we don't have a model that is that accurate, by the way, that's 95 to the power of 30. That goes down to 60% accuracy over 30 steps. So the promises that are being made are not based on the technical reality we're living in right now. The technical reality doesn't support those promises because the cascading failure rate, the cost of these agents, the issues around making a bad decision. Well, it booked us a restaurant, but that restaurant is in Bangkok and we're in Seoul. So what happened there? Right? That's not hugely convenient. That's actually really annoying. So the promise, this future fantasy, is displacing the present day reality. And the present day reality is serious security and privacy concerns and a handful of systems that don't actually do what the future promises say they will.
Right. The AI boom is here. Tech company stock prices have surged. At the very forefront of this movement is NVIDIA. Their silicon chips, known as GPUs, are the crucial engine for the massive compute that generative AI requires. As a result, companies worldwide are forming long lines just to acquire them. And because of their incredible performance, NVIDIA's stock price is soaring. Its market cap has exceeded $4 trillion, making it by far the #1 company in the world. At the same time, venture capitalists and major corporations are pouring enormous sums of money into AI startups, companies like OpenAI, the developer of ChatGPT. And despite all the voiced risks, all the warnings about AI, there is currently no stopping this investment boom. And all the AI companies or AI division in the big company are trying to break even.
They gotta break even, yeah.
Yeah.
They haven't though.
Yeah. But I think they haven't stopped that because investors keep pouring their money into those businesses, and the market cap of big tech companies has skyrocketed. Google, Alphabet just exceeded $3 trillion threshold.
Yeah.
So how can you stop that, or what are you going to do with that situation?
I don't know, but I think you just hit the nail on the head. There's a lot of converged interests that have bet on AI. If you look at the S&P 500, it's primarily tech companies. So we're talking about a heavy reliance on a handful of players concentrated in one industry that have put their chips behind this particular version of AI, this bigger is better, mass scale, agentic approach as the winner. And so I think what you can look at there is at least part of an explanation for why the rhetoric is so extreme, why the promises of agents as a magical fairy godmother that's going to do everything for us while we sit back and relax is so distinct from the reality, which is that these systems don't quite work and they're doing weird things with our data and they're being implemented in ways that make every security professional get really anxious. Why is there such a divide when we know that, common sense in the tech industry is that many of the things that are being done are not the best way to do them? Well, because there's a huge amount riding on AI and they have yet to find that break even. And this is not me saying that AI is useless, that we shouldn't have, it's saying that economically we have an issue around the capex that is being poured into AI, the promises and the future promises to boards and the public and shareholders versus the present day reality.
But individual stock investors are happy if the stock prices go up, and there are more and more such investors in Japan and these days.
Yeah.
So what can you tell them?
I can tell them, cool, be happy, but there's a risk here. There's an analysis you should pay attention to. And what we do not want is to wake up one day and suddenly no one wants to buy a tulip bulb. We do not want runaway speculation based on fantastical claims and an assumption that, well, everyone is doing it, so I should do it. We want investment based on solid reality that isn't leading the market astray in a way that could lead to significant economic downturns and consequences. So I would say, do your research. Recognize where there are technical realities that are grounded in fact and empirical evidence, and where there's fantastical thinking about a possible future that doesn't actually exist and is not grounded in reality.
Legendary AI researcher Geoffrey Hinton quit Google and warned about 50% chance of wiping out humanity by AI. Or earlier this year, there was a petition calling for a pause in AI research on massive AI system. So are these working?
Well, they're working to drive media cycles. I don't know what else they're doing, and I don't agree with the idea that AI systems, absent human control, absent human volition, are going to somehow magically gain escape velocity from the cables and wires and energy requirements of the data center and the material constraints and become conscious, become God, become a force that can wipe out humanity. Now, if you were to let an AI system with a malformed objective function run a nuclear plant, maybe so, but that would be a human choice that was made to do something incredibly irresponsible that would, in all contexts, be illegal, not the fault of the AI. So my concern with both the petition and the way that Geoffrey often sees this risk is that what it's doing is ultimately advertising AI in ways that aren't responsible or grounded in science. AI by itself is not a superhuman godhead. It is not sentient, it is not conscious. And saying it is attributing power to it that it does not warrant and that ultimately accrues to the benefit of the companies that are creating it. Because who doesn't want to control God? Every military, every government says, sign me up for that cloud contract if I can access AI through it. Sign me up to license your AI capabilities because I hear they are superhuman. I hear they are conscious. I hear that they are sentient. And I think that's a very dangerous story to tell. And even if it's believed, I don't think it's evidenced. It's at the level of religion, not the level of science. And religion is very important to people. I don't want to, say that it's wrong or bad, but it's distinct, and we shouldn't confuse that with the empirical scientific evidence, which does not support that claim.
Don't be evil. For years, this had been a guiding principle at Google since its founding. But in 2018, while she was still an employee, Meredith Whittaker led a protest against the company. It was called the Google Walkout. What sparked it? Reports that Google had paid a massive severance package to an executive who had resigned over sexual harassment allegations. The news ignited a fierce backlash from employees, and the protests grew, eventually including 20,000 employees worldwide. It was a defining moment. A clash between the idealistic culture of the West Coast and the profit-driven strategy of a giant publicly traded company. And it is this very clash, a conflict that continues in the tech industry today, that we will focus on at the end of our interview. I want to call the final part of the interview, Can We Build Tech for Good? But before we get into that, I want to kind of dig deeper on what you have done in the past at Google, Google Walkout. What did you do and why is it important?
Well, the Google Walkout was not just me. I was one of the people who helped organize and coordinate it, but it was thousands and thousands of people across Google. 20,000 was the count that we had, who walked out to protest unethical decision making and bad workplace practices by the company. And this was spurred in part by people like me, many thousands across the company, feeling that the early commitments Google had made and the tech industry had made overall to steward the power that they had over our lives, to define what information is important and showcase that information, to steward our private communications, to manage our calendars, to own and operate the nervous system of our digital world across the globe. That the promises that they had made to do that with integrity, to do that in a way that would reject the bottom line in service of their principles, were being undermined, that those promises were not being kept, and that given the increased reliance of the world on these infrastructures, on these services, that it was part of having dignity as people who worked at Google, who made our names at Google, to say that we thought they needed to do better. And we did that by walking out.
So there has been an ethos at Google, don't be evil.
Yeah.
But it was not true anymore at that time.
That's how it looked. Yeah. Yeah. And that when you have that much control, whether it be over information and the shared reality that we all, consume on platforms through different, search and other services, whether it be our personal communications, whether it be the AI and how that reflects or doesn't reflect the world around us. Tech is not just a normal industry. Tech has taken responsibility for many, many functions that governments used to serve. It has taken responsibility for our infrastructure across the globe. 3 companies now have 70% of the cloud market. That means our governments, our economies run on cloud infrastructure provided by Google, Microsoft, and Amazon. And that is the type of responsibility that needs more than simply delivering to shareholders as a North Star. That it requires a sense of integrity and a willingness to say no to money when preserving your core principles is the alternative.
Can they say no to the money when they're a public company?
Well, that might be an issue, yeah. I think a public company might not be, if they can't say no to the money as a public company, then a public company is not the right form for an institution that has taken on so much social responsibility.
How did you see Google change over time? And is it even changing in this era?
I'm sure it's still changing. And I also know there are many, many people at Google who really do care. Many people working there who are working as hard as they can to direct it in better directions, right? This is not a black and white issue. But I saw Google change from a very small company where everyone was, very, very committed to that mission. There was a sense of pride, to a much bigger company where the pressures of quarterly returns and pleasing shareholders grew more prominent, where it began to act and feel more like a traditional corporation and less like the early Google.
Is it the problem of management, or is it more like a structural thing?
I think it's more structural. Of course, management that adheres to certain structural parameters will succeed under that structure, whereas those that reject those might not. But I think it's structural. Even if you replaced all of the C-suite at Google, and all of that C-suite said, we are going to reject $100 billion because we believe we need to do that to preserve privacy and maintain our integrity, the board would replace them in 3 seconds, right? Because ultimately, the fiduciary duty of the board cannot legally reject $100 million.
Yeah.
And so I think that structure is something we need to call into question. And one thing we think about a lot at Signal is what is the structure we can create that enables us to do truly innovative technology, to not just protect our moat, protect our monopoly dominance, but actually do technology differently that can embody fundamental human rights, that can make new things that don't exist, and do that in a way that isn't undermined by a business model that we don't want to participate in.
So is the structure you're talking about a nonprofit?
I think a nonprofit is not a perfect form for this. It is annoying. It is difficult to operate, at the level we operate as a massive communications network that exists as core infrastructure that has to be on all the time for real-time communications and high-stakes situations across the globe. It's difficult to be a nonprofit and operate at that caliber and that level. But the structure that we're looking for is one that honors the mission above all else. And if we can produce profit that way, that is great. If we can get revenue sources some other way, that is great. Any way that we can, continue to persist while making sure that our North Star remains privacy and truly innovative privacy technology, not profit, not something else. We're happy with that. So nonprofit form is not our goal. Nonprofit is what we chose to enable us to do what we do right now. But ultimately what we need is a structure that holds the North Star, holds our mission as the highest priority.
How does being a nonprofit for Signal?
Well, it's a little, it means that we're much smaller than most of our competition. We're about 50 people, so incredibly small for for an organization of our size. It means that we have reporting requirements. It means that I can't sell out easily because even if we were to sell Signal, the nonprofit structure requires that we reinvest the returns we got on that sale into mission aligned causes. So there is a way that it protects us in some sense, but it is, again, it's not the perfect form. It's a form that lets us do what we do in an industry where, profit is generated through data creation, and we don't want to collect any data.
In 2023, Signal's operating cost was about $40 million per year, you disclosed.
Yeah.
And you said it may reach $50 million by 2025.
Yeah.
So how are you going to cover the cost?
We cover the cost through donations. Yeah. We have generous donation by Brian Acton, the co-founder of WhatsApp, who came in 2018 and helped establish the Signal Foundation. We have a generous donation from Jack Dorsey, who has contributed a significant amount. We have a number of other high net worth individuals who contribute to Signal. And then about 30% of our revenue comes through small donations. So if you go in the app, you see kind of donate to Signal. You can donate $5 a month, you get a badge. So there are many ways that people support Signal, but right now it's donation based. Yeah.
Are donations sustainable to keep the business?
Well, so far they are. Yeah, and we're looking, we also just launched our first freemium feature. So we have secure backups, which let you, back up Signal in case your device gets destroyed. And anyone can opt in to use secure backups for free. But if you want to store your media, your attachments, or your photos indefinitely, you can pay $1.99 a month and be able to store those indefinitely. And that helps us cover the storage costs, which are of course expensive, and is our kind of experimentation with the possibility of charging for certain features that can help bring in revenue.
So what if billionaires like Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos offer donation? Would you accept it, or would it hurt Signal's independence?
Well, look, Signal is a special creature in some ways. We take donations from many sources, and the second we would even consider and implement a change to please one or another donor, that shows up in our code base because we are open source. That means you don't have to take my word for it. You don't have to say like, oh, she seems nice, believable. Okay, she's probably telling the truth. No, I don't want you to take my word for it. I want you to validate that what I'm saying is true, and you can do that by examining our open source code. So we are protected from that kind of influence in a fairly significant way by the fact that every action we take to change anything in our app, in our system, is immediately made public. And not only is it made public, it's made public on a code base that is one of the most observed, where we have people who almost like train spotters for Signal code sit there and watch our releases and then go through the code, because there is such a high incentive for hackers or information security researchers to find an issue in Signal. Because if they were able to find a vulnerability, if they were able to find a problem, and they were presented that at Black Hat or DEF CON or one of these hacker conferences, they would get a job anywhere. Because Signal is such an important infrastructure, and finding a problem in Signal, which has been historically very hard to do, is a way to prove your prowess. And so we have an immune system around Signal that is observing everything we do. And let's be clear, they write into us. They write long emails when they find anything, and we get on the phone with them and we talk through, hey, this is what you found. Thank you so much for telling us. We submit a patch to that. We're constantly responding to anything that's found in the code base. So anything we did to undermine Signal would immediately be evident to a very, very vigilant community. And again, we're there because we're committed. We're not there because we found a nice job to rest invest.
Okay. So finally, what is your dream for online privacy and freedom for the next, I would say, 10 years?
Well, I think my dream is privacy is the default, and surveillance, the collection of mass amounts of data, is the exception. I want everyone anywhere in the world to be able to pick up their device and, without even thinking about it, open Signal and connect to anyone else they want to. Because encryption requires a network, and I think privacy as the default is a fundamental pillar to ensure a livable future, to ensure the persistence of democracy and freedom around the world.
Okay, that's great to hear.
Cool.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.